Okay, we're recording.
Okay. I have 5 o'clock. Thank you all for being here. This is the Town Council Finance Committee meeting, July 9th, 2024, starting at 5 p.m. I don't think we start with the Pledge of Allegiance for these committee meetings, right? Okay, good. So we had hoped to have most or all of the members of the Finance Committee from Town Council present. I believe Hillary is going to be coming on Zoom shortly. Oh, she's on. Okay. So Hillary and I co-chair the Finance Committee on Town Council. Hi, Hillary. And also on Finance is Christina Ross, Penny Young, Luke Kaufman, and Janet Fonts. Penny said she was unable to be here, so she's going to watch the tape, and we'll just get started. The purpose of this meeting is fairly simple and straightforward. Hillary and I wanted to have some report to give to the July 17 Town Council meeting in terms of the wrap up of the fiscal year 23-24 and the outlook for 24-25. So I'm glad that Ann and Josh are here, and Todd and Chris and Tom on Zoom. So one of the things I wanted to cover, even though Todd, you had a very descriptive and thorough letter in New Canaanite and other places explaining the mill rate, I wanted to just briefly summarize those deliberations, if you would, please.
Sure.
And then we'll get a summary review and year-end wrap-up of 23-24, and then an outlook for what we're looking at for 24-25. That's it. That we do allow for public comment, and I don't see anybody on Zoom, and there are no citizens in the gallery here. So unless somebody's waiting to Zoom in, I think we'll forego the public comment and scoot right to mill rate and onward.
So over to me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Please.
Hi, Tom. How you doing?
Good.
Thanks for jumping on.
You bet.
As you know, we've got our regular meeting at 7 tonight. So let's see where to start. Where's the best place to start? I would say we start with trying to always run a surplus. And it's not that easy because you can manage the expenses. We've been surprised by expenses occasionally. And COVID certainly did that, and other things drive that. But for the most part, if I went back and looked, I would say our budgeted expenses are probably within 1% of what we end up with. Yep. I would say we could look back, and so that's very tight, well managed. The revenue is the wild card. So we count on about 70+% of the revenue, obviously, is from the property taxes, and people pay their taxes. So we can take that to the bank. That's always a very predictable number. Conveyance fees, permits, not predictable, not as predictable. We do our best to budget those conservatively because we cannot miss on the downside. It's okay to miss a little on the upside, and we did this year as we typically do, but not always. And we do miss on line items at levels higher than we've had in the past because of obviously this economy, and conveyance fees in particular have been down. I guess they're down a couple of years in a row. We budgeted lower, and we did just make the budget by $84,000 at SC. So we just made the budget, but until last month, we still thought we were going to miss by a couple of hundred. And building permits and the conveyance fees, both, I will say tonight, Tom, diving catch saves on both of the revenue line items, seriously, and came in just a click above budget. But that is why we do the mill rate in June, not May. We do it as late as we can to have as much information as possible in our hands so that we can make the most informed decision on on where we're going to end up with the budget. So as I said, expenses came in right on the money, maybe a little below, and we had a little surplus on the expense side. And then the question is, what's going to be the surplus on the revenue side? It was a couple $1 million. I think net it was about $3.5 million. The books aren't closed. It's not done. It could move. I doubt it'll go lower. It could creep up a little bit, but we felt very comfortable with a surplus in that 3.5, 3.6, 3.7 range is what I think we banked on. And then we look at, okay, what else would we like to top off this surplus? So we're going to give the surplus back to the taxpayers, right? It's not our money, it's their money. We don't need it per se. You know, you could use it for certain things, but the best use of it, you know, would seem to be give it back to the taxpayers. So then the question is, well, how much do we want to top that up, if at all, to impact the mill rate? So just on its own merits, that the surplus would drive a certain mill rate. And then the question might be, well, can we afford a little bit more money, $500,000, $1 million out of our general fund to bring the mill rate down a little bit more? And we have that conversation. This year was especially tricky because we had the double helix complexity of the major revaluation. And so that obviously had more impact on the mill rate than anything we could do on the expense or tax side. So the reval, there's always a little bit of a valuation change in town every year. It 1%, 2%, you know, tiny numbers. So that does move around a tiny little bit. This time, obviously the grand list jumped 25%. People's homes went up 40, 50, 60, 70%. So even though the mill rate did come down almost 20, 18%, something like that, there were people whose homes went up 30. If you went up 25% or more, your taxes were going up. And there were, as you saw in my note letter, thousands of homes that went up, you know, 35% or more. That meant their taxes were going to go up considerably because the values went up. Now, you could argue, people say, well, the value went up. Value of my home went up $500,000, so my taxes went up a few thousand. Okay, well, you know, you can't monetize the increase, but the taxes are real. So we did add another $1.3 million, $1.4 million from the general fund to offset the mill rate. So the net that we call it pay down. The mill rate was $5 million. Last year we did $6 million. The year before it was 5 or 4. We've generally done 3, 4, or 5, and so that's how we triangulate on a number. Why not more than 5? Well, we also have a threshold around the amount of our fund, our general fund. That's the non-restricted aspect, part of our general fund. We want that to be no less than 10% of our operating expense, and so that's a real guideline. That's a hard line that we've drawn. Now we could have more, but Moody's and the rating agencies want to see 10% or more, so we stick with that. We could be a little higher, but I think what we've learned now is, given the predictability of how we run it, the money we make in interest now with that money, we feel that there's no reason to run a much bigger general fund, unassigned general fund, than about 10, 11, 12%, something in that range. We don't want to go below it. There's not a lot of reason to be above it. We don't foresee. It's also getting to be a decent. It's $20 million, so it's not an insignificant amount of money, and so we're confident that that's more than enough to please the rating agencies, more than enough to manage the contingency expenses that we might have, but not so little that we run afoul of any rating agency guidelines or directions. So that meant we really couldn't add any more than we did. So that capped it out at 5, and that then is just math in terms of how it triangulates onto the mill rate. So that's the mill rate. That's how we got there. The implication, of course, was 7,200 homes, about 1,900 homes or property taxes went down, and then the rest obviously either went up $0 or $1 to 1 or 2,000, and then we had a few thousand homes that went up more than that. I wrote that up. All those details are in the letter that I wrote.
There were actually valuations that were higher by 60 and 70%.
100%. There's property values that were more than that. Now, some of them doubled the size of their homes, or there's substantial change to the last reval, and they hadn't had a transaction. Remember, if you had owned your house in 2007 or 1998, or maybe not that, but just before the last reval, and then made substantial changes, you haven't really been trued up yet. Right. And you got trued up. That's it. So there's some homes. There were hundreds of homes that went up. I wrote it in my note, but maybe almost over 1,000 that went up on average over 35%, many up 60, 70, and 80. Yeah. But if you went up about 20% or less, your taxes went down because the mill rate came down. And then again, like I said, there were literally well over 1,000 homes that went up $25, $85, increase of $150 in taxes, that sort of thing. So there was a pretty wide spectrum in impact. So that's sort of the mill rate and where we ended up. And
Yep.
I think we like the process. I think we do debate I don't know, Tom, your thoughts or Chris's. We do manage conservatively on the revenues as best we can. And we do budget for slightly less than 100% payment of taxes in the year. And as it turns out, we're at 99.3. That surprised me.
Yeah.
So that's a lot. So 0.7% of the taxes aren't paid. So we use 98.5. We just budgeted reality today. So almost 1% of the taxes aren't paid. You know, that's over $1 million. So that's a meaningful.
So 99.7 is nice.
Take
That's high.
99.3.
Yeah, that's high. I mean, that's good.
Yeah. Well, it's great, but if we
Budgeting
budgeted at
98.5.
100, we'd be
Right.
$1 million
Yeah.
short.
Yeah.
So we budget, you know, and by the way, they'll pay, but they haven't paid yet.
Yeah.
So they could be just running late or so, who knows, for whatever reason. So our payment history is phenomenal, and the payment of overdue taxes also quite good. But like I said, there's still 1% missing and over $1 million that we don't have yet. So we had to budget and prepare for that, but that's part of the calculation as well.
Great.
I mean, it's probably worth noting, Todd, to your point, that we have debated, and we continue every year to debate the wisdom of budgeting a 98.5% collection rate on the taxes in terms of trying to settle where we think the revenue number is going to fall.
That's right.
Ann and Josh have been very helpful to us, you know, in trying to, and, you know, a lot of times we think, well, you know, we're consistently above whatever, but it's not just what's the number going to be when the dust settles. It is, as Todd mentioned, there's a little bit of a timing as well. Like, when is that money coming in and whatnot? Yeah. And so we just thought the prudent thing continues to be 98.5. We'll have those discussions again as these years unfold, but that is certainly something we had. And Todd also alluded to, we've enjoyed in the last, I don't know, call it 18 months, an interest rate environment that we hadn't seen in years. And so an ability to make money on our general fund and whatnot and all the other accounts. Good
add.
Game changer.
No, thanks for adding that. The way to think about the 98.5 is it is a little bit of a cushion for the things we don't know. And this 2 years ago was a conveyance. We missed the budget. This year we're on the budget, but it's a lower number, right? So you know, it's fine being on the budget. Well, what good is it if your revenue's down? Were your expenses down? You know, so it's not, being on the budget and having enough money are two different things. And so we always have to have that amount of money. On the interest income, we don't just make that on the unassigned general fund. We're going to collect $70 million in 40 days, right? Something like that. We need 12 or 15, and we burn off that 70 over 6 months, get another 70 in January. But for a couple of months, we have a reasonable amount of cash that we can earn with 30-day paper. So with 30-day paper, that has given us a phenomenal yield, as you know, that we haven't seen in a long time. But this was the first year we could capture a full year of it. Last year, I would say we caught about a half a year of a reasonable interest rate. Now, we've budgeted for, I think, a lower interest. Our interest rate expectation was not this high for this year, and it is not. We had, right, Tom? We
thought it was going to come down. Yeah, it's persisted higher than we had anticipated.
So we may have a little bit of help there, but again, there may be other things that are offsets.
Right.
That's all great. Thanks. Any other comments or questions on mill rate? No, everybody here was intimately involved with it, so good. Let's just get a sense, maybe from Ann and Josh, of how fiscal year 23-24 wrapped up. As you said, Todd, we're at 99.3% on collections. There's a surplus, and how does it look for year end, and what are we thinking about going forward? Just broadly.
For 24, we're definitely on target for what we calculated for the mill rate. Revenues might come in about 300,000 more than we budgeted, so as savings, so to the good. Expenditures right now, we have what's called a 60-day look back until that period is over. We have a lot of entries that we have to make. on top of, we've close to $900,000 worth of encumbrances still open. What that means are there's purchase orders out there for expected invoices coming in. If they don't, because something came in lower, then that becomes back as savings, but we don't know until we
Okay.
close those out. So we think right now, maybe 500,000 above our 1.8 is where we stand. But once I close those ones, that will creep up higher.
So that will go right into the general fund,
It'll go
which
right
would be
in.
great. So that's good. Takes a little pressure, frankly, helps cover what we want to do next year. So.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
So that's what we're looking at for 24. And like I said, at the end of, middle of August or so is our kind of deadline when we start closing these things
Yeah.
out.
And the audit gets done when?
So we are required to file by December 31st.
Okay.
So just see that Board of Ed doesn't close their books until the end of August.
Yeah.
So then we start taking over in September to finalize all the books to turn over sometime middle of September. To the auditors, then they need about 4 to 6 weeks. At that point,
Okay.
Can
Can you tell this is my first year on town council? I'm asking all these-
Okay, good questions.
Gotta learn.
There's actually kind of 3 different audits they do for us, the town side, the Board of Ed side, and what's called an ESF. It's a large report
Okay.
that the Board of Ed has to do. So they do 3 actual audits for us. And then we bring it in front, we have an audit committee, so it goes in front of the audit committee for approval to move forward to the various boards by the middle of December, so we can file. And that's the
Right.
process.
And obviously I was involved in the whole budget process for the coming year. And that was up just under 5%, correct? If I-
Over, just
Oh,
over.
just over 5%. I thought it was 499. I thought it was.
But I know,
Yeah.
527 was the tax.
Sorry.
Yeah.
What taxpayers pay, sorry.
Okay, so the overall budget up 4.99%. My expectation from what I've heard from a lot of other folks in town government and, well, mostly in town government, is that next year we're going to be looking at similar increases largely due to inflation and wage increases. Am I far off from that? And there are
This
other
coming
things
year?
that people, what's it?
For this coming year?
Yeah,
We haven't even had the game yet. I don't know. I wouldn't say that. I don't know where that comes from.
had the game.
We haven't played the game yet. I don't
Oh, I know,
know. How
I
do
know.
you tell me the answer already? I haven't played. the
Well,
game.
I think, I know last year, or in the budget for BOE, there were a lot of things that they wanted that the town council, Board of Finance approved and made your adjustments, and then town council, when we voted, we pulled back $250,000 from BOE. I expect for the year after that, BOE is going to want to continue to grow, and that's the biggest part of our budget. Wage increases are going to continue to put pressure on us. So what do we expect?
For this year, our labor contract is done. There's
Yeah,
no,
done.
no change in,
Right.
it is what it is. So
Yeah.
there'll be no increase in,
Yeah.
unless they add more, if they want to add more heads for next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I can't say right now what the increase is going to be. It's
Yeah.
way too early to
Way
say
too
that.
wait.
I wouldn't even venture a guess. I mean, I think that's on us, frankly. It's on, you know, you and the selectman's office and on the Board of Finance. and town council.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
We have contracts. Those are going to drive a certain amount of,
Yeah.
of labor increases. They're known. Now we're renegotiating a couple this year next, so fine. But I wouldn't,
What about longer term? I mean, do you on Board of Finance or Ann and Josh have a sense of 10 years, 5 years down the road? What kind of pressures are we going to be facing? What are we going to be looking at? Are there longer term concerns in any of the general areas?
so I'll give a quick answer, and Tom and Josh or Chris, of course, just you can share your thoughts. Think of the budget this way. There's our debt. We know what it is. We've gotten it down to a reasonable amount. I think our expense this year was 17 million of debt, of interest,
just over 18.
$18 million interest and capital and interest, principal and interest. We'd like to, over time, I would speak for myself, not for our board, like to get that down to $16 million a year or $15 million a year. So being prudent on we've got a police department, but, I don't see another $20 million or $30 million thing out there. Irwin's off the books. We've done the schools. We're going to do the police department. We built this. So I think as a team collectively, we should think about how can we, because we pay that down, as you know, straight line every year. So in 4 or 5 years, that falls off hard. I mean, hard, but of course we'll be adding debt. So managing that number down is a great way to take a little pressure off of the other drivers. 17 million. It's the number 2 expense after the Board of Ed.
Oh, yeah.
So that is something to think about. That is a lever. We can manage that through being prudent about added debt to get that annual expense down. That's real. Let's not run that up to 20. Let's figure out how to get it to 17, 16, 15. I mean, that would be a great goal. Then you're at fire, police, right? Some of the basic fixed cost, public works, paving the roads. Do we look at that long term? Well, we have the number of police that we have. We don't foresee doubling that number of police. We don't have highways. We don't have ocean. We don't have a lot of the things that do. Those other towns end up having more officers on their staffs, like Westport and Darien, just because they have to. Fire, we have what we have. We've got the team that we have. Paving the roads, it's an annual thing. We know what it is. Sure, we're susceptible or vulnerable to the vagaries of commodity pricing, but again, those numbers are in the singles of millions. So what the school will always be the biggest driver of expense, and I think we collectively have to manage that. Do we have a 10-year view of that? We don't. I don't think the Board of Finance has a 10-year view of that. Yeah. We know that we've had 4,150 students plus or minus 50 for 15 years.
Yeah,
dead flat. So I do think it's worthwhile looking at maybe what some of the drivers are for that budget, but. So we look at debt long-term, we look at the structure of the town, how many police, how big of a fire, how big of public works, roads, and the rest of it. All of that is done on a multi-year view, but I really don't see it doubling or tripling. Why would they? So now you're at the schools.
And we're not thinking of any big capital projects. I mean, there's a fire engine or 2 down the road.
All that.
Caveat that would be elementary schools.
Yeah.
Well, they'll come around again. You mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna come around again. So that's fair. That's fair.
But
Fire truck, yeah, but those are,
The
yes.
elementary
$1 million
schools
over
need
the years,
to
yeah.
more kids.
No, remodeling,
Renovating.
renovating.
Oh, renovating.
Updating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, right.
Darien has recently done all of its elementary schools.
And I mean, the possibility of increased numbers of families with kids moving into affordable housing, when and if that gets built and gets closer to 10% for the state, my back of the envelope guess is that those kids are going to want to go to schools in New Canaan. That's why they're moving here. The schools will become, at the elementary level, will become pretty crowded. So that possible expansion of the schools,
Possible. It's out there.
maybe 5-10 years down the road.
Don't know.
Another
Don't
one
know.
could be longer than that. And
Yeah,
the problem there is that you have the increase of the kids, but you don't have an increase in the tax rates.
right. Oh, yeah.
So that is a real problem.
Yep.
If you have,
Potentially.
families bringing 300 kids, only single family homes, and they're paying taxes. But the number of homes in New Canaan are kind of finite. There's not a lot of undeveloped land here. So any growth would have to come from affordable housing. The other thing that we have to keep in mind is Waveney House. That is a major expense. There is a lot of stuff that needs to be done on it. And, it's $15-20 million. Eventually you have to go into it over 10 years or so,
Could be.
something like that. So.
If I may, I just want to go back to what you said about the Board of Education. The fact that the pupil population hasn't grown, but what has grown and keeps on growing is the administrative side of it. And I don't know how we can rein that in or control it, but that is also a driver to increasing the carrying cost for the Board of Ed that
Sure. Sure.
we have to be able to control it in some way.
I know, but that's not this meeting, right? I mean, you gotta meet with the Board of Ed and have that conversation. I think,
Yeah.
and if you think that way, you should do that and have that meeting.
Well, I think those conversations, it behooves us on town council to have those conversations long before we vote on the next budget.
Exactly.
That's our plan. Of
But,
course, yeah.
but the Board of Finance looks at the budget to begin with. By the time we get it, this is the recommended budget.
Yep.
So our ability to put some input into what drivers we're seeing that need to be looked at are missed opportunities by the time we get it. So either we have those conversations at the subcommittee meeting, or we have a joint meeting like we had a couple of years ago between the town council, the Board of Finance, and departments to kind of address what some ideas might be and some concerns.
Yeah. I think we should do that, and we will do that. I certainly want to have it.
Well, a big meeting is not very productive because you've got 25 people sitting in a room.
Yeah.
Board of Ed gives one presentation. There's not enough time for 25 people to ask meaningful questions.
Yeah.
So I think the way it is now, we have our meeting, we ask our questions, we drill down. And then because of the way it's structured, you guys don't get a shot at it till the end. So you've got to preempt it. You've got to go out there and have a discussion with the Board of Ed and stuff.
We
Here's a
have,
potential
we
way.
have all the opportunity to watch your meetings, to sit in on Zoom,
Yeah.
to watch the tapes, and we do that. But you're absolutely right. We've got to get ahead of our process.
I wasn't discussing or bringing up the meetings that we had as the town council and Board of Finance. I was talking about the ones that we had at Lapham, where we just had a think tank over a weekend
Oh,
in preparation for the budget
I
process.
don't know how productive that was either.
I had to sit through that on the board that side, I didn't feel prepared.
I mean, if you really-
It was a whole Saturday, but.
I mean, if you really are concerned, I mean, you gotta go talk to them. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're also supposed to have joint liaison meetings with the various departments. So whoever the Board of Finance and the town council liaison is early,
Yeah.
before it goes to the Board of Finance, is supposed to meet with the various departments together and discuss, and then, Todd and I have talked about how we need to start in September really looking at, sort of with Ann, sort of what's going on, with the financial statement and see where we're headed. But really, it behooves each board to have those liaison meetings and coordinate them early, because there's a lot of departments and a lot of, there's a lot going on. I mean, we're internally doing a lot already at that point, so you just need to get everybody scheduled together. It doesn't help like the town departments to have a liaison meeting with the Board of Finance and then a liaison meeting with the town council and kind of repeating the same information twice.
Right.
Yeah, I
And
think
that's what Mike has been encouraging all of us to do
Mhm.
since November, was to, do meetings like this. I don't know how productive this is going to be. It's helpful for me and it's helpful for
that's
others
good.
who may watch it.
No, that's good. That's important.
But throughout the year, and particularly in, November, December, before the budget process really kicks into high gear, for us to sit down again and.
Yeah, I would say, just thinking back in this past year was a bit odd because we didn't have an incumbent selectman slate until November.
Yeah.
In other words, that's unusual. To my knowledge, I've only lived here 31 years. We've never changed out all three selectmen. So there wasn't a way to set in one election. So there wasn't a way to set the guidance or have those conversations in September, who you can have them with.
Right.
The selectman's not going to have them because they're not going to be there. So I think that made last year a bit of an anomaly. What we would normally do is sit together and talk about guidance sooner than later in September, thinking about after we've closed the books, we know where we are, what do we think, capital, non-capital, and so forth. This year was a little different that way. We all started a little on the late side, and that's kind of why we made so many cuts, particularly on the capital side. We cut $9 million. I mean, part of it was just because, so, everyone was sort of just seeing it for that first time, which is not how we normally run the railroad. Yeah.
Good. Well, I think I've seen the completion of the agenda. I'm happy with what you guys have said, and appreciate your time.
Yeah, I mean, for your report, the year's going to come in with a surplus as expected and maybe a little bit more. That's probably a bullet for your meeting. The budget process really starts in the fall. The Board of Finance will not have a meeting in August. You could put that as a bullet, unless Tom wants one.
Town council may not meet, I understand. So,
So,
yeah.
Anything from your? So we'll start that up and.
Thank you. Thank you all for taking time out of an otherwise pleasant evening.
And we have a new movie theater.
Enjoy a pleasant evening.
And we have a new movie theater.
And we have a new movie theater. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
Awesome. Thank you.
Really
Yeah,
great.
welcome.
Thank you all.
Thanks for setting.
All right.
Thanks, Tom. Talk to you in a bit.
Thanks.
See you in a
Hillary.
bit. Bye.
That was really easy, wasn't it?
Oh.
Adjourn at what time?
The meeting adjourned at, I have 5:31. The clock here says 5:28. The meeting adjourns at 5:30 PM. Motion to adjourn.
Is there a motion?
Second.
Yes, I move to adjourn and Christina second. Thank
Very
you.
good.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye. Meeting is closed. The meeting
Thanks,
adjourned.
Hillary.
Thank
See you
you.
later.